Unapologetic Live. So imagine this. You're a father living in the state of Florida. You got a 12-year-old daughter, and one day your 12-year-old daughter attempts suicide. You're shocked. You have no idea what's going on. And then you in turn find out that your daughter has socially transitioned to be a boy at school, and you were never made aware of it. On top of that, your daughter has been dealing with so many other psychiatric impairments that the school was completely aware of and told you nothing. And now you have a 12-year-old daughter who has attempted suicide and a father and a family that has to pick up the pieces. This is the story we're going to go through in the video we will be reacting to today. Again, this is out of Florida. Such a shocking video, but exactly what we've warned against with this sort of ideology seeping into our public schools and institutions. Let's get into it. Hi guys, and we're back. So we're gonna get into what is a very, very shocking story today. As I said before, a 12-year-old in Florida attempted suicide after going through a very long-term struggle, it seems, with her gender identity, with other psychiatric comorbidities, and it all led up to a father finding out about all this because the school kept it from him. Here's the video of this father by the name of Wendell Perez going through his daughter's story and talking about the anguish that he and his family have gone through because of this.
In January of 2022, I went to my daughter's elementary school to deal with a very sensitive incident. My daughter attempted suicide by hanging in one of the school bathrooms. My wife and I were told that by the school counselor that it happened because of an ongoing issue with her gender identity. We were in shock because our daughter never showed any signs of questioning her biological sex. We were told that they knew about the gender issue due to meetings they were having with our daughter behind our backs. We learned that during these meetings, our daughter's confusion was affirmed and validated through the use of fictitious male names and male pronouns. Our daughter was living a double life without our consent or knowledge.
What? Like, what? Are we listening to like what was just said in that minute? Imagine being the father, the mother, the siblings of this young girl in this scenario and finding out all of this information for the first time. You have a father here who has gone through what is the horrific realization that your daughter is struggling in this way, that a 12-year-old girl would decide to try to hang herself in the school bathroom. And on top of that, finding out from the school that they were aware of the struggle that she was going through and that they were in fact nurturing that struggle, pushing it forward and blindly affirming a 12-year-old girl in this identity without telling mom and dad. Can you imagine just shockwave on top of shockwave on top of shockwave, finding out what has happened to your daughter? And all of this without your knowing consent. There's just so many levels of wrong to this, and the fact that he's keeping such a calm and cool composure while reading this letter of what's happened to him just blows my mind. I don't know how I would react as a parent hearing this sort of stuff, but this is exactly what we've warned against, because right now what we have is this sort of gender ideology being injected into our public schools, our institutions, our corporations, media, Hollywood, you name it, it is there. And what we have coupled with that is teachers, educators, administrators going, you know what? We agree with this dogma, and if your parents don't, we're your new parents. We're the ones who are going to take on your care. We're the ones who are going to take on that responsibility. And are they going to do as good of a job as your normal parents would? Probably not. And this is evidence of it. And this is not the first time that this has happened. We've reacted on the show before to a mother in tears at a school board meeting talking about her daughter, who also struggles with suicidal ideation, who had expressed gender confusion, and the school took her in and said, you know what, we'll give you new pronouns, we'll give you a new name, and we won't tell your mom. And look at what the outcome is of that. It's almost as if you should allow parents to know this sort of information about their child. It's almost as if you have a duty to tell parents when their child is struggling like this. Secondly, it's almost like blind affirmation of gender confusion doesn't exactly fix the problem, because that's exactly what the school was doing here. And look what you ended up with, a 12-year-old girl who was dealing with so much inner turmoil that she decided to hang herself in the school bathroom.
She was affirmed and socially transitioned in school. Due to the nature of the incident, our daughter was Baker acted and taken away from us with minimal contact for over a week. Until she was released under our care. As a family, we had to pick up the pieces, clean up the mess, and start a period of painful healing. However, we decided as parents from the beginning that we were not going to affirm the dysphoria. We were not going to validate a delusion, contrary to the recommendation from some professionals.
Important stuff that he just said there. He said we made a decision as parents that we were not going to just go and blindly affirm this. In fact, we're not going to affirm the identity of my 12-year-old daughter. And while that can sound like a very harsh thing, and I'm sure there are so many people tweeting at this video and saying what a disgusting thing to do as a parent to not allow your child to be who they want to be. And that's not what he's doing, is where I will go out on a limb, and that's what I'll say. And it's very important that he says, some experts told me to come through and just affirm my daughter. Some, because there are many experts who will tell you the exact opposite, that there's a different form of therapy for children like this that does not focus on just affirming all it is that they say and all it is that they believe that they are to be. You can still go through therapy in what is a compassionate form of treatment that allows children to process these feelings, to process these ideas, and still come to the conclusion that, hey, there are different ways to be a girl. There are different ways to be a boy. And I might be a particularly masculine woman, or I might be a particularly feminine man. And those things are okay. And going through the process of acknowledging that through compassionate treatment is the best thing that you can probably do for your child. At least with what the data and the studies that we have so far, that's what is shown. So for a school to go, no, we're just going to ignore all that. We're going to ignore what should be our duty to tell parents when their kids are dealing with something like this. We're going to ignore all of that, and I'm just going to give free reign to this 12-year-old to decide who it is they want to be, what their new name is, what their pronouns are, and we'll write that into the way that this school operates, and we won't tell your parents. Disgusting. And I just imagine when this lawsuit goes through, because he has filed a lawsuit, there's going to be a very expensive payout for what they've done here.
In the field. We provided, actually we did provide unconditional support with proper mental health care and non-affirming therapy to our daughter. Underlying disorders like depression and anxiety were properly treated. We removed her from the school environment and placed her in homebound. We brought her back from her confusion. She is steadfast and sure of her gender, and the suicidal ideation is gone. This semester, actually, she is ready to go back to the brick and mortar school setting. In summary, our daughter was suicidal when she was being affirmed. However, when she was brought back from that state of confusion, the suicidal ideation disappeared completely.
Wow, imagine that. Imagine there's a different form of treatment than going through the painstaking process of just affirming your child, putting them through a medical transition period of puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, sex reassignment surgery, which involves, let's go through the details here, taking skin and body parts from other areas of your body and creating genitalia. For women, either stopping the process of creating breasts through puberty blockers and hormone replacement therapy, or just lopping them off surgically. These are the things we're talking about under the beautiful names of gender-affirming medical care and sex reassignment surgery. These things all sound very, very benign, very neutral, like there's nothing. This can happen overnight and everything's going to be fine and the recovery period is nothing. But what these are, in fact, are experimental surgeries that have not been done or studied in a long-term setting whatsoever, and there are now a group of people who are advocating for minors to be able to go through them. And this very well could have happened to his daughter in a different set of situations where he never became aware of it, or when he did become aware of it and said, you know what, I'm not going to affirm that, had his daughter taken away from him, which is happening to so many parents across the United States now. There are so many horrible ways in which this situation could have ended. But luckily, this young girl's suicide attempt was unsuccessful. Imagine had she been successful, and now you have the parents and the family just sitting in a mess that could have been utterly avoidable had they just been alerted by school administrators, teachers, apparently mental health professionals. Had they just been alerted and told, your daughter's going through this, and expressed a little bit of concern. How do you want to deal with this? Because in fact, this is a discussion that we should not really be having in school, unless it's affecting her schoolwork and maybe she needs to go to a guidance counselor. And we'll get into a discussion later in the show of what we think schools are meant to be for. Because right now, schools are operating as like secondary households where you go and you're having conversations about sexual relations and sexuality and what gender you are and your race and how that affects your place in America and mental health and all these different things. Are schools really meant for that? Are schools meant to facilitate the sort of discussions that this 12-year-old should have had with her parents and with mental health professionals? I'm going to go out on a strong limb here and say no. It's not what schools are for. And so long as we keep treating schools like they're for this, these are the situations that are going to be brought about. So let's hear the end of his remarks, and we'll close out on this story and move on to the next one. It does get worse.
Therefore, my daughter's case disproves the current narrative that the lives of children with gender dysphoria are in jeopardy if they do not get affirmed. If you validate one delusion, then what is next?
A great question to end it on. You know, we love when things end on a question. If you validate one delusion, then what is next? And for 12-year-olds specifically, this is a very harmful delusion to go and validate, and probably a delusion that was put in place by the school system itself. I don't imagine she was just independently introduced to this sort of idea of being confused about your gender, and then was just in happenstance in a school that was going to facilitate this process for her without telling her mom and dad. I imagine they played a very heavy hand in leading her down the path that eventually led to an attempted suicide. And now here's a father who is luckily filing a lawsuit and now has to deal with the broken pieces of all of this. And now you have a 12-year-old who's going to have to deal with the reality of what she's been through and this attempted suicide her entire life. Is there enough money in the world to really make up for what this 12-year-old has gone through? I mean, you guys decide. Put that down in the comments below. And we did ask the poll, do you think the father reacted in this situation appropriately? 75% of you said yes, just right. 4% of you said no, too strong. Interesting. And 21% of you said no, not strong enough. I commend him for keeping his composure and being very calm about the way he treated the situation. I think there is something to be said about being calm in situations that in my world certainly do not warrant being calm. I would be just a firestorm in whatever setting he's in right now, talking about my daughter, had she been placed in this situation. But sometimes a firestorm is not helpful. Sometimes the most helpful thing to do is to come through and calmly express what's happened to you. And I think because he did that, his story is going to have such an impact on people who hear about this and see what's happening in their schools. Completely disgusting. I hope he gets millions and millions of dollars in the payout from this school for what they've done. And I hope his daughter is able to recover from this, and hopefully others learn a lesson about how to have these conversations with your children. You don't need to make your child confused about your gender, and in fact, that's one of the worst things you could probably do to your child in looking at the outcomes. And yeah, that's where we close out on that. Taylor, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for, like you said, the ability that he had to remain calm in the midst of what is an infuriating situation. I mean, as soon as he explained what had happened, you should have seen our chat just went crazy with people like, I'd be livid, I'd be screaming. But in fairness, we've said on the show, we've been critical of people on the left when they come out and with these like crazy, angry
Yep.
screeds in the wake of like a shooting situation. And it's just like, just because you feel passionate about something, that doesn't make you right. You still have to, like, what do adults tell kids? Use your words. And that's the power of free speech. What's powerful about this video is not only that he remained calm, because if you're just calm and you don't use your words to say the truth and say powerful things, then okay, you are kind of being a pushover.
Right.
But if you remain calm and zero in on the truth of the matter and say, no, we decided we are not going to affirm this, but the people who talked her into this and pushed this on her made her confused, made her suicidal. When we got her out of that confusion, the suicidal ideation stopped. Those are all very powerful, poignant and pointed statements that he made that pointed out and elucidated the truth of the matter at hand. And it makes the people who are pushing this stuff look like the crazy ones.
Yep.
Instead of, if he would have reacted unhinged, they can spin that and say, well, you're just being this emotional wreck. It's not that big a deal, blah, 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 blah. And so I think there's a lot of power in not only remaining calm, but being calm and using your speech.
Yep. And it's so wild because people on the left are going to watch this and come after him.
Yeah.
And attack him. And I can already see the statements that are going to be made now. They're going to be like, you put your daughter in conversion therapy. That's why she's saying she's not a boy and this and that. It is unbelievable. All because we've made up our minds that this is the way that things should be, that kids can decide what gender there are, and there's no other answer. There's no other solution. In fact, it's not even a problem. It's not even a problem for a kid to be confused about their gender. In fact, it is a good thing. It is something that should flourish and should be encouraged even. So this dad's going to deal with hate and backlash for saving his daughter's life. Clown world.
It's the classic, it's not happening. Okay, it is happening, but it's a good thing that it's happening, and you're a bigot for saying that it shouldn't be happening.
Right.
It's kind of, we see that pattern.
And then he goes, what about the suicide part? Unrelated.
Yeah, and what do we talk? We talk about that on the show all the time. The willingness to overlook harm, the
Yep.
willingness to overlook how defund the police harms minority communities, the willingness to overlook how this transgender ideology actually harms the very people with gender dysphoria that they're trying to help or pretending to. I just wanted to also read the super chat from Sup My Dude. Says, it's shocking how close-minded and woke teachers are today, and how suddenly it happened. This stuff didn't happen when I was a kid, and I'm 33. And as someone who's in their early 30s as well, I can attest to that.
I mean, when I was a kid in public school, we were not talking. It wasn't until I got to high school that I met somebody who identified as transgender. And that was one person, the first time I'd ever met anybody who identified as transgender. And I actually was on the left at the time. So did this like whole campaign of like, we need to accept and we need to open up the bathrooms and all these different things for this one singular person who identified as transgender. And I wish I had the knowledge that I have now. To have used compassionately back then when meeting that person, because knowing it now and looking back, you go, oh man, I like saw that stuff, and there was questions that could have been posed. Not that I was want to impose on this person's life or their viewpoint of who they are as a person, but just have questions and open up a dialogue around these things rather than being like, no, this is the way it is. This is the way it's gonna be, and I'm gonna deal with this for the rest of my life. And in hearing this story, you just have to imagine how easy it is to convince a 12-year-old of that. Any 12-year-old who's a little bit uncomfortable with themselves, maybe doesn't have too many friends, is struggling with finding out what their interest is, what they like, what they dislike, maybe leans a little bit more on the masculine side as a girl, and then you tell them, oh, well, there's this thing you can do, and it's going to make you feel so much better, and it's going to make you feel so much more comfortable with who you are as a person. Take a matter of minutes for a 12-year-old to be like, yeah, sign me up. I want to feel better right now because I'm 12 years old and my mind is malleable and I'm into instant gratification and I'm so uncomfortable because my brain is really not capable of taking in all the stimulus of the world and coming to an adult and mature conclusion about these things. So yeah, I'll take the thing that's going to get me acceptance. Yeah, I'll take the thing that causes literally any change because I just need change right now. That you have to imagine that this is going to be an epidemic among young people, and it already is. Like the rates at which people are starting to identify as non-binary and transgender are unbelievable, and there's just so many reasons why that's an easy thing to grab for and to identify as. So there's going to be so many more stories like this, and again, so often the people who are susceptible to identifying as transgender or actually having body dysmorphia have other psychiatric problems. And if you go, well, it's simply the gender thing, and it's because mom and dad didn't accept it, and you guys didn't create a culture of acceptance, that's why she attempted suicide. Let's just forget the depression. Let's just forget the anxiety. And then those things pop up, and all of a sudden you have a child who is no longer alive. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about life and death. And as much as the left likes to say we're the ones coming after trans lives and we're the ones who are taking their lives, that's not the case at all. Look at the studies, look at the research. It's their form of treatment that is actually leading to that. So we really are talking life and death here. And luckily, this 12-year-old got to survive to hopefully tell the tale at some point, although it's not on her because it's not her fault. She should never have to talk about this really another day in her life because it really wasn't her choice. But anyways, here's another super chat from Pammy S. She says, I wish you could chat with Kelly J. Keane here in the UK. Thank you for being a strong female role model for young girls everywhere. Thank you so much, Pammy. And I'm not familiar with Kelly J. Keane. You know who that is?
No, it's new to me. We'll have to look her up.
Okay, we'll have to give her a little look up. And if she's interesting, we'll get her on the show. We're constantly looking for guests.
Always looking for cool people.
Always looking for cool people. Speaking of cool people, let's react to this video that's going viral out of UC Berkeley. So Peter Boghossian, who we reacted to earlier for him going out and doing these thought experiments where he asks people or he gives people a statement like there are two genders and asks, do you strongly disagree? Do you strongly agree? Or are you somewhere in the middle on that spectrum? And he did so. And a geneticist piped up to talk about her views on transgenderism and whether or not you can transition genders. And this now has 1.2 million views. Let's see what she had to say.
Yeah. Trans women should be legally treated as women. Tell me why you're strongly disagreeing.
Because I'm a molecular geneticist. Being male or being female is a developmental process. You can't go backwards. Okay. So you can't change your sex. Like, you cannot do that. And the truth is that currently in California prisons and prisons in other parts of the country, women are getting impregnated by other women. Mm-hmm. And there's just no way that, I mean, this is against the UN. After World War II, there was like I don't remember what body came up with this statute, but it was against, I believe it was the Hague. You cannot house female prisoners with male prisoners because they get raped. And that's happening today.
She's right. She is not lying. We've seen sexual assault happen in California prisons where they've now decided if you're a male inmate who identifies as female, just fill out some paperwork, we'll review that paperwork, and we'll send you over to a female facility. Do you have to undergo hormone replacement therapy? No. Do you have to undergo sex reassignment surgery? No. Do you have to do anything that shows that you actually present to the world as a female? No. We'll just transfer you over. And what would you have? You know, you pass this law and you say it's okay, and suddenly hundreds of male inmates have now stated that they identify as female. So many male inmates, in fact, are saying they identify as female that it's above the actual population demographic rate for people living in the US who identify as transgender. So suddenly there's this massive spike of men in prison specifically who identify as female. In one case, they actually sent over a man who was a serial killer of women to a female facility. In New Jersey, you saw a transgender inmate get transferred over to a female facility, and guess what? 2 inmates ended up pregnant. How did that happen if it was just another female being placed in the female facility? That really makes the mind work a little bit. It's almost like they're still men. In every way, shape, and form, they are biological men who have simply made a statement and said I identify as female, and now they're being transferred over. This is something that J.K. Rowling has been very outspoken about, as she's seen it happen in countries like Sweden, where they're saying a man who rapes women can identify as a female and be treated as such. So when we talk about the issues regarding transgenderism and how you identify, so many people will try to minimize your concern. Why would you be concerned about bathrooms? Why are you concerned about men, biological men playing in female sports? And oftentimes you'll hear that and you'll go, oh, well, yeah, I guess I guess these are small issues. It really doesn't affect me all that much if somebody wants to use the bathroom. It doesn't affect me all that much if, Leah Thomas is going around beating up all the other women when it comes to being in the swimming pool, or if a man who identifies as a woman is literally fighting other women in a ring during a sports match. That doesn't really affect me all that much. But it does. Because if you make that concession, you make the concession that men get to go into the female facility at gyms. They get to go into the female facility when you're at the spa. They get to identify as female and get treated by doctors as if they're female. They get to identify as female in the prison system and get transferred over to female facilities, and then just run wild and do whatever it is they want with no repercussions because they have their trans card. That is what you are conceding when you concede things like sports, when you concede things like the bathroom. You are quite literally creating female victims. But all in the name of feminism, I guess? I don't know.
I go to the women's changing room at my gym, and there's a dude in there. He's putting on makeup and hoop earrings. And this is not something a woman does when she goes to work out. No.
Except the Instagram baddies.
Or do women beat each other to death? But men do. And it's so sad that women have internalized misogyny to the point where the man's comfort takes precedence over the woman's safety.
See, this is where I disagree. I don't believe it's a matter of internalized misogyny. I think it's a matter of being so open-minded that your brains fall out. It's quite literally what it is. Just being accepting of all things because truth does not exist anymore and objectivity doesn't exist anymore. I don't think women are doing this for men's comfort. I think they genuinely believe that biological men can identify as female and should be treated as such. Genuinely. Do you see any internalized misogyny in that?
No, of course not.
No.
And yeah, it's a strange thing that we end up causing more harm by trying to be nice, or end up in a worse situation. It's like, we can, have you ever experienced a situation in life where you are nicer than you should have been, and it ends up creating a bigger mess than it needed to be because you gave up too much ground from the get-go, when you should have just been like, okay, I have to have this confrontation, but here's the actual truth. And I think we all know deep down that standing on something like biology, standing on something like reality is important.
Yep.
And yet I feel good, I feel virtuous, or I just want to avoid the confrontation I think most people are on that side of things. It's not so much that they are these virtue signaling people that want to just, impose this woke ideology. Most normal people are just like, okay, you do whatever you want to do, I guess I'll go along with it. But we've done that so much and so long that we've started to allow and create room for this stuff to happen, where male inmates can identify as women and create all kinds of havoc there. And we've unintentionally ended up erasing women and erasing women's accomplishments and erasing women's sports and doing so many things that are so much more of a mess that we could have been avoided if we just would have said, no, you're still a man.
Right. I mean, gone in every sense. Like, gone. Female accolades, gone. Female sporting, gone. Female safety and privacy, gone. Like, due process when it comes to things like this, gone. Like, you've quite literally abolished these things in a matter of what, like 5 years? This has been very quick onset for how far we've descended into madness and just complete erasure of women. And as much as people talk about, feminism and whether or not there's a need for it, if we're talking about old school feminism where we actually put men and women in their place and say these things are equal, maybe we need a resurgence of actual feminism here, because this is not it. This is not it.
There's a reason why they don't want to be in men's prisons, because men beat each other to death. Women don't do that.
What, if anything, would cause you to move to the disagree? And is there anything you heard here tonight that would convince you to move one line over? It's okay to say no, I'm just trying to figure this out.
No, I have figured it out.
And you're confident?
I am as confident as I am that this is my hand in front of my face instead of yours. There is absolutely, this is the most insane thing that has ever happened to me in my life, that women are a feeling now.
See, guys, not all heroes wear capes. Some of them wear cardigans. And this woman has done what's needed to be done. And it's a message, again, just a calm message put forth by somebody who's saying, here's where you need to be concerned, and here's where the problem is, and here's what has happened. And 1.2 million people later, the message has blown up and people are hearing it. And it's this cool, calm, rational just explanation of why things are wrong and maybe why things should be seen in a different light that really breaks through for people.
Yeah, and I actually love how she did say that women have all this internalized misogyny. Like, she recognizes the same problem that we recognize, but she locates it and grounds it in something that is different, a leftist worldview. Right. And yet, she's committed enough to reality that she can acknowledge the problem. Yep. And I think that's like the line that distinguishes between the woke people who have become too detached from reality to even acknowledge that the problem is that we're departing from reality. Yeah. And the people who are just like everyday normal people who can still, we may disagree politically, but we can come together and understand that this is insane and not okay. And I'm reminded of, I talked to James Lindsay for PragerU when he came and filmed this 5-minute video. And I asked him, because I had noticed he was on Ali Stuckey's conservative Christian podcast in the same week that Richard Dawkins, a renowned atheist, endorsed his book. And I was like, why are you at the center of this convergence of atheists and Christians? What's that common ground that you're sharing? And he said reality. They both believe in objective reality, and that there's that weird intersection that we have right now of people who may come from different ends of the spectrum, but if you're still like Colin Wright, our friend, his blog is called Reality's Last Stand. He just got kicked off of Twitter for speaking out against gender ideology, which is wild because he's like classically liberal. Yeah, exactly. He's not even a conservative person. Yeah, but I think so. It's such an interesting thing of the day that we're in, is that like just normal people who just can still will not concede I will not say blue is red or whatever. I will not say this guy is green, are the ones who are finding this common ground right now.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we said, is like we used to agree on what the problems were and just disagreed on the solution. And this is this is like a prime example of that. She agrees on what the problem is. She disagrees on what the solution is, because her solution involves internalized misogyny. Our solution involves just like a complete separation from what reality is. But at least we agree on the problem. Oh my gosh. And I second that, Taylor. I'm glad that she said internalized misogyny, because I think that left-leaning people who watch this will be more inclined to agree with her because she made the point through their worldview. And I think that's a powerful thing, and something that I could learn from is that how do we argue things and try to get to the common ground of agreeing on what the problem is, but how can we do that through both worldviews and through both lenses and sort of come to an explanation where we can both agree this is a problem that needs to be solved. So all for it. Go run with the internalized misogyny thing.
Yeah, I would love for us to get back to a place where we can actually have the debates, because we're both living in reality, and let's talk about the best way to view that, or the best way to negotiate these differences or whatever. Right. But right now we have this woke monster that is pulling everyone away from reality, and we're both just having to be like, wait, no, that doesn't even make sense. Let's link arms, defeat that, and then get back to like actually having the debates and playing by the same rules, because it's like there's a third team on the field that's cheating and not playing by the same rules and changing the entire rules of the game, right? And they're silencing the referee, and so everyone who is playing fairly is like, wait a second,
how
this
the heck
is not
are we
cool.
supposed to do this? Yeah, like we can't even play the game anymore. Shout out to Asher, thank you so much for your super chats. And then Torrance Kingman gave a super chat and said, as a former leftist, what's your story of re-enlightenment? Your moment of reality. Mine was BLM glorifying criminals. I think that was the moment for so many people. COVID probably being another moment for so many people. For me, it was working for the political left myself and just recognizing sheer and utter hypocrisy at its core and at its heart, and then coming to them with questions and being denied answers.
There are plenty of videos of you telling those stories on your channel, by the way, so if you want to poke through, I can post a link to one of them in the chat. Yeah. But there's a couple shorts we've posted recently from interviews Amal has done, so make sure you check those out. You can hear a lot of your story. You also have a Stories of Us episode, Daily Wire interview on this, so it's out there.
It's out there, ladies and gentlemen. And they regret not giving me answers now, I bet, because I'm a menace to society when it comes to left-leaning ideology. Here is our next story. This is from Christopher Rufo again, who's just constantly, on beat and has his pulse on things like critical race theory and gender theory. He says, Scoop, the Springfield, Missouri Public School District held a training program forcing teachers to identify their racial and sexual privilege, promoting identities such as pansexual and polyamorous, and warning that misgendering a trans person is an act of violence. Yes, because words are violence, silence is violence, like we always say on the show. The training program began with a land acknowledgement. For those of you who don't know what a land acknowledgement is, it's like, we acknowledge that this land has a dark history of subjugating slaves and Native Americans, and that everywhere that we stand is stolen and all that stuff. So they all engage in what is a unanimous virtue signal of white guilt. So that's always fun.
Is there any piece of land in the world that has not been like fought over or had a war or blood spilled over it or had one people living there that was conquered by another people in history, by the way?
I'm going to guess no. I'm going to guess no.
Maybe like in Greenland or in Antarctica or something like that.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, in Antarctica,
inhabited.
Siberia is like your best bet. There's something there. Yeah, and we had this brilliant moment where we went on the streets of LA, like asking people about America being a racist country. And this guy walks up and he goes, yeah, America's totally a racist country. We stole this land from the Native Americans. And the only people who can speak to being a true American are Native Americans. And he was such a kind guy, by the way. So don't take my impression as anything rude. But I responded to him and said, every piece of land ever was taken from somebody else, and even Native Americans fought on American soil to steal land from each other. Are we supposed to track back the first Native American tribe that ever had land and then do something for them? Or can we sort of acknowledge that, move on, and get over it? And he goes, you know what? I think we can move on and get over it. It's like
fastest mind change I've ever seen.
He's like, upon thinking about that, that was a pretty good point. It was the fastest mind change ever. And he was just such a sweet guy. So I'm glad we got moments like that on video, because I had so many moments like that, of course, being on the left and hearing these things. And I still have moments like that to this day where I'll say something and I'm like, oh, you know what? I was actually stupid. And I was totally wrong about that. Let's continue reading. Next, the district asked teachers to identify their racial and sexual privilege and consider how they contribute to, quote, cycles of oppression, end quote. This system leads oppressors, i.e. white male heterosexuals, to feel, quote, anger, dehumanization, guilt, collusion, ignorance, self-hatred, end quote. So these are the little games that you match. So you have to match up the definitions of power, privilege, oppression, race, ethnicity. Should we do one of these quizzes one of these days? Would you guys like to have us do privilege quizzes and find out where we rank?
This game is rigged against me. I would totally lose in 5 seconds.
Taylor's white, heterosexual, cisgendered male who is Christian and conservative. Right-handed, tall.
Oh man, so many privileges.
He's got 2 parents.
Ugh.
Everything is just going against him in this.
Easy.
You're basically the king.
Pretty much. I mean, hey, we talked earlier about the student loan debt story today, and I was like, wait a second. I didn't have any, I forget what outlet posted something about how that the minorities are disproportionately affected because they don't have family wealth or mortgages that they can use to pay their way through school.
Right.
And I was like, well, I had to work my way through school with community college and rely on Pell Grants from the government and worked 30 hours a week while doing my undergrad and but privilege, right?
But privilege, right?
And I love Tom Sowell always does the Appalachia example of there's no privilege over there,
right?
But we all know this.
It's all different. You cannot speak to somebody's personal experience just because they look a certain way. It is so ridiculous. And just to go on a tangent with the student loan debt thing. No. If I was president, I would just be like, no. I'm not paying off your student loan debt. I did not force you to take your little loan and write your name on it and sign on the dotted line for something that you could not afford. And just imagine people running around and being like, Mr. President, I regret buying my Lincoln in 2018. Can you please pay off my car loan or my mortgage, or can you pay off my rent because that's something that I'm debted in? No. You made the decision. I'm so sorry. What about the people who made that decision and took out the student loans and who are totally responsible in paying it off, or families and students that like work their asses off to pay off their student loan debt? Are they going to get $10K in the mail? I bet not. What about future people who are taking out student loans in a tuition circus that continues to just rise and rise and rise and rise and rise? Are they going to get student loan forgiveness? It's just like you are encouraging stupidity.
Yeah, I forget. Peter Doocy, the White House correspondent, was on camera today talking to one of the government officials and was like, so just to be clear, no one who's paid off their student loan is going to benefit from this, right? And he was like, yeah, no.
No.
And it just like the clip ended right there. I was like, well, there it is. At least they're honest about it.
It's like the government telling you, yeah, just make a bad decision, and then instead of like trying to be responsible and work off that bad decision, just wait until it becomes a problem for the government and for our economy, and then we'll fix it for you. What type of message is that to anybody, let alone citizens who are supposed to be contributing toward your society? It's unbelievable. And then the message to people who actually are responsible and take on their debts and take on these challenges, they go, oh, why did I do that? I should have just waited like everybody else did and done nothing, and then I'll get $10,000 from the government.
Right. Or we're smart enough to avoid the university scam in the first place and do trade school or build a business without doing all that. They're still having their tax dollars go toward this, or the government is no longer collecting the tax revenue from the loans anymore. So how does that hurt? It's the same thing as like the inflation policy and printing money. It hurts everyday people. It's the invisible tax. This is just another way that everyday people are being hurt by broad strokes government bureaucratic decisions that, by the way, have this, like, I think you're right in zeroing in on it, anything besides holding people accountable for their own actions and making people be responsible for their own lives.
100%.
It's like that our whole government system is designed to bail you out for making poor decisions.
100%. Imagine you have two kids and you're like, kids, go clean your room, right? And then Timmy goes and cleans his room, and little Jimmy doesn't go clean his room. And then you wait and you're like, oh, did you guys clean your room? And Timmy's like, yeah, Mom, I cleaned my room. Super cool. Do I get anything for it? No, you don't get anything for it. You know, pat on the back. Good job. And then what was the other kid's name? Little Timmy? Little Jimmy goes, no, I didn't clean my room. And then you tell him, oh, don't worry, we'll hire a maid. That's literally what you're doing with the student loan debt. It's quite literally that simple. And then people are complaining and saying, well, just because you were responsible and paid yours off doesn't mean you should ignore the suffering of other people who can't do that. I'm sorry, what? You guys made a bad decision and you have to deal with that bad decision. That's it for me.
That's it. Really Mic drop.
Mic drop.
Back to our social identities.
Back to our social identities, guys. Again, breaking down race, ethnicity, gender, sex, boring, cycles of oppression, socialization. What are all these? What are these actions? Do nothing. Don't make waves. Promote status quo. Blah, blah, blah. Boring, boring, boring. Privilege. Why does it make people so angry to hear that they're privileged? I love that teachers are watching MTV News Decoded while being trained to do their jobs. Here's some slides on gender identity. So you have biological sex assigned at birth, which is a virtually new phrasing of you're a boy or you're a girl. Then you have gender identity, so where you identify as, gender expression, and then your sexual orientation. And all these can be a mismatch in today's day and age, and you can just hodgepodge it and create an amalgamation of whatever it is that you would like to be, and kids can get their boobs chopped off. That's essentially what they're teaching. Administrators shared a video featuring, quote, genderqueer and non-binary children, which claimed that some children, quote, don't have a gender, end quote, and that misgendering a trans person is an act of violence. Quote, my identity, although you can't see it, still needs to be validated, end quote. And this is all funny, haha, I can't believe they're teaching this to teachers. But this, right, snowballs and grows and grows and grows and grows. And then it becomes story A that we went over today, where you walk into the school bathroom and there's a 12-year-old hanging in the school bathroom. So as funny, haha, crazy, genderqueer, non-binary, whoa, these things are so crazy, I can't believe we're talking about this. It snowballs into 12-year-olds committing suicide. and then parents that have to deal with it because they've implemented this in schools and decided not to tell mom and dad. So here's the discussion that I was sort of getting myself into this morning, or at least the thought process that I was getting into. Is there any room for schools to be talking about sex, talking about gender, or talking about race? And is this a discussion that should even be had at schools? And the more I thought about this, I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's not something that's necessary. It's not what schools are made for. It's not what they were intended to do. And all of those conversations, if even necessary at all, should be handled by parents.
You're not going to get much pushback from me on that. Yeah. Like I had basic sex ed classes. I think most people did. And so did you have them in like high school and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, stuff like use condoms and whatnot, but it's like,
is that even a school's job?
Yeah. Is that really the school's job to educate your kids in that? And
yeah,
I'd say better left to parents on any matters involving sexuality. I think that's a better, and where we're headed is like, because of all the confusion around even being able to define gender or all these like this questions of sexuality, sexual orientation, and the parents wanting to be teaching their kids different things. I think you're going to have to maybe draw a line like that where it's like, okay, no teaching this stuff in schools, and maybe the Parental Rights and Education Bill is a step in that direction.
Yeah, I just can't see why it's necessary. You know, I went through a phase of when I was super progressive. Oh yeah, you should talk about all this stuff. You should talk about gender. You should talk about sexuality. Kids need to know this stuff because they're going to see this stuff in the world. And then I went from, oh, well, we don't need to talk about the gender stuff. We don't need to talk about the sexuality stuff. But sex ed is probably an important thing to do in schools and probably something that's necessary. And now I'm in the camp of, is that even necessary? Can we just allow parents to handle that conversation with kids? Or is there a space that needs to be a discussion in schools? Because maybe parents won't get to it if schools don't talk about it. And I can see it being a small discussion in something like biology or anatomy, where we discuss how babies are made, right, and how, you know, and kids clearly should learn that at some point or another throughout their school careers. But do we really need to get into the nitty-gritty of things with children when it comes to sex education and gender and race? No, I don't think schools are made for it. But we are moving into this territory, as I said before, where schools are like secondary homes, which they're not. They're not. Schools are just meant to equip you with basic knowledge, critical thinking skills that you can take out into the world and utilize in whatever way you see fit. And now they're just like these factory set institutions where kids come in and are treated all in the same format, shoved into the same box, given the same radical education, and then pushed out into the world with no critical thinking skills and no abilities. And we've just devolved into something that it doesn't look like an education at all.
Yeah, as you're going through this and these materials, it feels more like a indoctrination into a cult and a presentation designed like that for that than it does something that is designed to make people think critically or expose people to all perspectives or to teach them basic facts about biological reality. This is here is how you should think. And what's the famous, I think it's Margaret Sanger, like children shouldn't be taught what to think, but how to think.
Yep.
And this is the definition of teaching them what to think.
Exactly.
When you present this, hey, here is how you should think about gender, sex, here's the truth, this should be affirmed, your identity should be affirmed, there's a million identities and genders and all this stuff, and you're assigned this at birth. And it's like, that is a cultish worldview that you are pushing on people. That's pseudoscientific, by the way. I love our friend Colin Wright says that all the time. It's pseudoscience. There's no at the bottom of this. When you dig down to the bottom of gender ideology, there's nothing there but pseudoscience and a bunch of self-defeating arguments. Which, if you've watched Matt Walsh's documentary, he talks to the experts and they can't answer the most basic questions, such as what is a woman. So it is a non-starter from the get-go that there's nothing at the bottom of this, and to impose it or to allow it in our schools. And by the way, as part of the corporate trainings and DEI, this is the exact same kind of stuff that's in there in all of our major corporations across the country. Yep. It's getting into our Hollywood movies and TV shows that are being made and kids content. And we've seen the Disney leaks and stuff. And it's just like, dude, this is a pseudoscientific mental cancer or ideological cancer that is spreading all over society. And yeah, we will have to, in order to fight back, I think you're right that and onto something that we'll have to draw lines like, okay, no more sexuality teaching in school, nothing about this stuff. We're done. I made a poll on your channel, by the way, right now. Do you think that sex should be taught about in school beyond basic biology and anatomy? And so far, 82% of you say no, and 18 say yes.
Yeah, see, it's an interesting discussion because, I could see people existing on a big spectrum when it comes to that question in particular. But yeah, I'm sort of leaning towards, it should not be taught outside of basic anatomy and biology because look at the mess that we are creating in going deeper than we should be going with these students. Now, before we move on to our last story of the day, which is sort of just an interesting thing that was created on TikTok by me somehow. Let's read our 2 super chats here. Anna Bagley says, love the show. Thank you so much, Anna. And Bella Daisy says, hey from Australia. Oh, we have a third one. By R. Bracewell 21 says, saw your highlights of Freely Ashley from TikTok. You should talk with her. She's intelligent and has some good viewpoints. I will look up her as well. Never heard of her.
That's the former leftist that we reacted to on the show from TikTok.
Oh,
yeah.
Is she? Oh, she's the one who's like calling out why she left the left and how angry she was.
Her husband was asking her basic questions and it caused her to. You guys should look into it. We have a couple videos on our channel reacting to her, but she's at Freely Ashley on TikTok, has some awesome videos. And I think Sabrina's in touch with her. We talked about maybe having her on the show. So.
Oh, okay, cool. So maybe you'll see her on our show in the future. I wasn't even aware of that. Okay, guys. So I posted a short and a TikTok yesterday. Was that yesterday?
Which one? The Hunter? Yeah.
Hunter Schafer.
Did that go out this morning? I think it went out yesterday.
Well,
but
whatever.
anyways,
we posted a short talking about Hunter Schafer. For those of you who don't know who Hunter Schafer is, he is a transgender actor who identifies as female, is become wildly popular for playing Jules in Euphoria, and is getting a lot of heat on the internet. And I'll explain why. You guys can check out this video, and we'll talk about the consequences of this video afterwards. Actor Hunter Schafer, known for playing Jules on Euphoria, is under attack on Twitter, and I'll try to explain why. Here we go. It's weird listening to myself. An Instagrammer by the name of Piggy Taiwan posted this whole rant. I'm not going to read it to you, but it basically is calling out non-binary people and saying they're hurting the trans movement that is fighting for medical transition. Hunter Schafer seemingly supported the post by commenting a bunch of exclamation points, and the internet freaked out. They all seem to think that Hunter Schafer, a trans person, is attacking the non-binary community, tweeting things like, who's going to tell Hunter Schafer that the real enemy are cis transphobes and not non-binary people? Pause there. So, yeah, apparently this whole Instagrammer put up this profile about how we need to talk about how non-binary people are hurting transgender people. And what I saw is what happens so often. Left-leaning people eating and spitting out other left-leaning people, which happens because the ideology is often so nonsensical that all the different identities can't exist in the same realm. A good example of this is the LGBTQ plus people who are talking about their vast support of Palestine, who then learn that often people in Palestine hate gay people and would just love to see them dead for their sins. The same can be said for many in the Black and Muslim communities who are really overtly homophobic. So oftentimes, you get tangled in this web of trying to support every single marginalized identity that has ever existed, and you find that you can't do so because there are contradictions among those identities and the way that they play out culturally and the things that they say. So, apparently, this was a post calling out non-binary people and saying, well, because you're non-binary and you want to abolish all these gender roles and all these gender traditional things, the binary systems of gender, you're actually invalidating trans people. And they said that non-binary people invalidate trans people because trans people adhere to a binary and want to go through sex reassignment surgery. And if non-binary people say that gender roles don't exist or invalidate gender, then what is the need for transgender people to undergo surgery? Does that make sense?
This is like the third time I've heard you explain it, and I'm still impressed that you can like wrap your brain around it because I'm still struggling to even understand. But I did have an epiphany while you were talking. I think free idea for these people. They should get together, by whatever means that they want to, maybe elect some representatives from each oppression group, right? And then they come together and build out a formula where everyone can enter in, okay, what oppression group you're in, check all the boxes that apply. You know, if you're disabled, if you're Black or Hispanic or a woman or minority or whatever it may be. And check all the boxes that apply. And then each one of those has a formulaic value assigned to it. And then you spit out your oppression number. And then you have an oppression number, and you know how oppressed you are on the basis of this formula, based on your intersectionality and all those, and how oppressed your intersection of your identities are. And then the debate's settled from the get-go, and you don't have to keep track of like, okay, well, this person is non-binary and these people are transgenders.
Right.
Which one's more
They
oppressed?
just have a number.
And
They like tattoo it.
Yeah, maybe it's like something you can have, like other people have to like affirm your number, acknowledge it, maybe state your number, like you state your pronouns, right?
Hi, my name is
Amla.
Omelette Benobi. She, her, 29.
Yeah, exactly. Right? I mean, come on. I think we're
Taylor,
onto something here.
This is actually genius.
Your oppression number.
I think we have a website we need to launch, and we need to launch it now.
Maybe we'll do it for them. Just help them with their own weird ideology, even though we don't believe in it. Just like, here, we'll just help you guys out and settle some debates. Avoid World War IV.
Honestly. And that might be exactly what we need to do. And, I know those are like privilege tests that exist online that sort of give you a privilege score. And that's a good baseline for our software.
Yeah. Which we should probably do one of those on the show for you, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that at some point this week. Maybe next week we'll do a privilege test where we all find out our scores and we can rank each other and then treat each other accordingly. But anyways, so I posted this video about Hunter Schafer trying to just explain this controversy and how non-binary people are now fighting trans people, and we should just sit back and watch it happen because, let the enemy defeat itself, if you will. And apparently my TikTok, oh no, I have to log in, just sparked an entire debate among leftists. So now the leftists are jumping in my comment section and saying Hunter's right and non-binary people are doing this, and then the non-binary people are hopping in the comments and fighting the trans people. And I think I just unlocked a new superpower, and that is actually finding stories where left-leaning people are arguing with other left-leaning people and then highlighting those stories so that they can argue in the comments.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's like, okay, it's kind of like you're the mediator. Like, okay, here's what you guys are saying. Here's what you guys are saying.
Right.
You lay it all out. And then they just come in and are like, no, I said this. And you're just like kind of caught in the crossfire. It reminds me of like you're a couples therapist or whatever. And you've got the guy over here and the girl over there. And you're like, okay, here's your position. Here's your position. Like, no, that's not what I said. And like, I feel like that's kind of what's happening in your TikTok comments right now.
Right. 100%. That is what's happening. And it's just so interesting to watch it happen and to be like, oh, this was not my intention at all, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
But I will certainly take it. And yeah, I wasn't expecting. So maybe there will be a lot of leftists in our chat. Here's more. Say they'll eat each other. So here's a conservative backing us up. Hunter is correct. People just can't have opinions anymore. I agree with that. Hunter 8. Guys, you guys are getting caught up on Gen Z slang here. I hope you guys are very familiar.
I don't know this one.
Hunter 8?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Like she ate and left no crumbs. You've never heard that before?
No, I've never heard that before. Oh my gosh.
You've never, like, she ate, like she did a really good job. Like you ate the meal, the plate's clean. Like she left no crumbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I get it. I've just never heard that before. Jason's in studio today. Have you ever heard that? Never. Yeah.
In my life.
Okay. Well.
Okay. Let's see. Babes really just sent and the internet implodes. Non-binary people are not to blame. Honestly, work. Hunter slayed. Mom, they're fighting again. There's so many interesting things that are just popping up, and I feel like Taylor and I need to create burner accounts that just follow leftist pages, and this is something we've talked about doing, so that we can just
I
keep
may or may
you
not
guys.
have done this already on Twitter.
Oh,
but yeah.
He's already on it, so that we can keep you guys in the loop.
I made an AI-generated profile picture, like a fake name. Yeah, so I'm on there, but I haven't really.
We need to
pulled it out yet.
we need to sleuth and just bring you guys. I got educated because I was doing this Hunter story, and I found out a new term, NB, which is ENBY, not the letters NB, and ENBY. NB stands for non-binary people.
Yeah, you showed me that, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that means non-binary.
I was
and
like,
I
I
looked
have
it up,
never heard about this shit in my life. I have
Yeah.
not heard. Like, what is an NB?
There's the dictionary gets changed every day, the old words, and then we got
Right.
these new words that we're adding in. So,
Right.
got to stay on top of it.
Like, I feel like I need to go and inject myself into more leftist spaces because I might be losing my grip.
Yeah, well, we talk about how like the algorithms just don't, they show you whatever you engage with, and we engage with a lot of content that is like just news focused, or the people whose opinions we respect, and so you don't end up seeing a lot of the crazy stuff.
Right.
And that's why we feel the need to make these like burner accounts where it's like, let's just engage with the crazy stuff we can find,
Right.
and then hope that the algorithm feeds us more of it, which it does. And yeah, that'll then end up being great fodder and content for the show. So
Yeah, I mean, another idea that we had, for those of you who are unfamiliar, there are things called racial healing circles, right? And these left-leaning organizations go and do them, and oftentimes because of COVID now, they're like over Zoom and virtual, and you can join for free, except if you're white, then you have to pay. This is true.
Okay.
This is actually true. If you are a white person who wants to...
So do you get a discount or?
I think it just cancels out. I don't
No,
know.
Yeah, the blackness overcomes. We learned that with Obama.
Yeah. I think they're like, pay $15, you're white. And then I'm like, oh, half black, it just cancels. Maybe I pay half the fee.
That's what I'm saying. But yeah, I think
I don't know.
Obama's our first black president, so if he gets to be that, then maybe you get to be a black person for the racial healing circle.
Yeah, I think it's free. But what I should do, and what I think we're going to do, is we're going to sign up for these racial healing circles and try to like get content for you guys of what's going on. And I'd either A, dress as a leftist, or just like B, go as myself and sit in these racial healing circles.
Yeah, you could get like all these fake tattoos and like one like with a BLM fist on you or something.
Right.
Wouldn't that be crazy?
Wouldn't that be? Yeah, right.
It took you a second. I was like, wow, did you not get
It did take me a
this?
second, and then I'm like, oh wait, that is me. Unfortunately, that is actually what I look like.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll put on like some really big glasses, like a Bernie T-shirt, or like like one of those like I can't breathe type of thing, and then show up to the Zoom meeting, and then I should poll you guys. Should I act normal? Like, should I act like myself and actually give pushback, or should I act like a leftist? Which one is more entertaining?
I think you should just keep ask questions. Keep asking questions that are genuine questions in good faith, but that increasingly make them aware that oh, she's not one of us.
Right.
She's not a real cult member.
Right. Like, I actually have legit questions for what you guys are saying right now.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully
we should
we'll
do
be
this
able
with
to pull
a
it off.
diversity training or something online too. That would be good.
Oh, I would love that. Oh my gosh. Anyways, we have plenty of ideas for you guys. Too much stuff and not enough space. Too many ideas and not enough time.
Teaser, we'll be coming out with a survey soon. So if you've got ideas or things that you want to see, things that we've done in the past that you want us to bring back, things we've never done that you'd like to see, get your ideas ready, write them down, and we'll be putting out a survey, and we want to hear from you. There'll be open responses in that, and also just things that you can say, I like this thing, this thing, this thing. So anyways, just coming soon, probably in the next week or so.
Yes. Coming soon, guys. So yeah, let us know whatever it is that you want to see, things you want to be done on this channel, because we'd like it to be heavily influenced by your input and by what you want, because if it's not something that you want, why are we doing it? Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I think that concludes our show for today. Hope you had a good time. Comment down below. Yeah, what type of videos do you want to see? What type of content would you like on this channel? What should we post on our off days when we're not going live? What should we do for our live shows? We'd love to hear from you and love to hear what you like to see. If you liked our content today, please like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time we go live. That is 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And you can listen to our podcast on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. The left-leaning people leave us 1-star reviews, and then it really tanks our ratings. And we need to be recommended to other people who need to hear this message. Guys, we're going to see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching, and have a fantastic afternoon.
Bye, guys.